Programmers are like gods. Not big gods, but, pathetic little gods, because they have the power of creation.
The modern world depends upon us quite a lot, so we are treated relatively well. We've always been in demand, though some more than others. Like the occasional spur of React developers, game devs, or rock stars, as the studios call them, and, most recently, AI developers. Though there is one field that is certifiably never going anywhere anytime soon. Everybody tries to sideline them until the gets real. Then they get all the cash and prizes. But by that point, it's already too late. I'm talking, of course, about hackers, the envy of the entire computer science industry. A few years back, I spent a couple of months working in cybersecurity. I was stuck in the kill myself of boredom blue team, and I haven't retained much knowledge from that point back in the day. Probably because I was shoved in with the administrators instead of being allowed to try and hack anyone and everyone in a safe and controlled environment. I would have loved to be an actual hacker, and I still fantasize about it. Not the analyst kind, which I did and is boring, but proper Mr. Robot, Elliot Alderson kind of guy.
I didn't do anything harmful my first time, just looked around, but I felt so powerful. 11 years old and in complete control of the Washington Township Public Library.
What would that guy look like? And what would his life look like? How much danger could he put himself in? And would that even be consistent? And what would his breaking point be? Then I came across something which I had to share with the world, and then I wondered no longer. Coders and codettes, I present to you Blackhat. The film premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater in LA on January 8, 2015, and was available to all theaters the week after. It was a box office bomb, earning much less than was put into production of the film, which is a bad sign of things to come. However, I've still watched it, I still love it, and I'm still gonna talk about it. The most popular actor in the film is Chris Hemsworth, so I could see that being the reason. Also, given that the film wasn't massively overhyped, like a lot of the trash we have nowadays, the lower attendance numbers probably start to make sense. The film opens up with his globe zoom in to a reactor going full meltdown in Natan's central Iran. In Chaiwan, Hong Kong, we get this weird zoom into the malware components of the reactor's setup for some reason, not really sure why that is. Apparently it's in the middle of being hacked and we're supposed to just pick up on that. Then we see some guy in a fully lit room write something and press enter. We don't get the guy's face, but apparently the film is trying to tell us that this is the bad guy. Which is confirmed when a lot of lights start moving and flickering very quickly. The centrifuges start whirring and spinning like crazy, and it looks like soon things are about to get out of control. And it goes boom. The story is basically a one-to-one rip-off from real life. Allegedly programmed by the United States and Israel, the virus is basically what kicked off the modern world of cyber warfare. Up until that point, the scariest things we had were the nukes, but after this attack, cyber warfare has been the #1 threat to safety and security for a long string of years now. The virus is called Stuxnet, and its target was Iran. More specifically the Natanz nuclear facility. It was put on USB drives and scattered around the site. Nowadays, we all take cybersecurity seriously and some companies actually train their employees on it. But back in the day, that wasn't a thing. So a passerby on their way to work would probably spot at least one out of hundreds of them, pick it up, and bring it inside the facility. Once inside, they would plug it in and the virus would execute. It was engineered to carry out the attack over multiple months on their gas centrifuges used for separating nuclear material made by Siemens. It caused a lot of damage and crippled Iran's nuclear program for some time. The attack was supposedly carried out to force Iran to sign the Nuclear Arms Treaty, and Stuxnet has only ever been discovered because it broke containment and started infecting systems which it wasn't actively instructed to infect. Additionally, Stuxnet is reported to have had 4 zero-day exploits, which is an attack that takes advantage of a security vulnerability which doesn't have a fix in place. These exploits are usually undetected, even by the vendors who created their own software, and their developers had 0 days to work on it and implement the solution. Hence the name, Zero-Day Exploit. We get a close-up of Captain Chen Dawai of the People's Liberation Army Cyber Warfare Unit, played by Li Hongwang, who's been assigned to this particular task. Generally regarded as level-headed, he will be the one leading the investigation, on the field, from the Chinese side. We get a close-up of an inmate at a prison, some random one for now, they haven't mentioned the name yet. He seems completely in the zone, even listening to music in the cell via his headphones. A privilege you're not supposed to have in a prison like this. There's this massive commotion and the guy knows he's up, so he gets cuffed and taken in for questioning. He even gets pepper sprayed because he objected to the thrashing of his room. The good old American justice system.
This was found in your cell. You added $900 to all your pals' commissary accounts in your cell block. Is this the attack tool? With it, you open up a terminal and that gives you a command line? That how you broke into the network and plussed up the balances?
No. I used it to call Santa in the North Pole and told him to do Christmas early this year.
He then gets sent back to his cell, but oh no, this time with a twist. He's been promoted to solitary confinement. He just stands there for a little while, sees nothing, goes "F it," and starts working out. He is committing to his own program. I mean, you're already getting locked up for life. Might as well use those arms. Never know when you might need them. The Chinese are in quite a panic, given what happened to them. We learned that the Americans were attacked in quite the same way. For this particular situation, they will be partnering up with the Americans, and more specifically, with the FBI, the CIA, and the DOJ. We get an expo dump from Carol, the FBI agent, about the Chinese.
What do we know about this guy?
His grandfather was a military commander in Shanghai in the 20s, in the 30s against the Japanese through the Civil War, Bronx High School of Science, MIT. His sister's a network engineer in the private sector. He's a rising star in PLA's cyber defense section.
Liaise with them? It's inviting them into the hen house, Carol.
She drops the line that everybody knows, but nobody used to state back in the day.
Stanley, we go head to head with the Chinese on their cyber intrusion every day of the week. Not a bad idea to be face-to-face working with them. For once.
Getting friendly with China is not a bad idea. Hopefully they can take care of the issue and stay good friends for a long time after the hack is done. Chen's back home, getting the code to the virus and perusing it, trying to find something. And the look of his face says a lot. I believe he succeeded. So he goes back to his sister, whose skills might be of use during this operation.
做 IT 杀手的。
我看起来像是你们的潜在客户吗？
Now this guy might have been useful.
When do we leave?
And we're done with our recruitment efforts for the day. The camera starts weirdly zooming and panning at the stock exchange over the soybean futures market. We get another cybermatrix scene before the numbers start going nuts. And lo and behold, the stock market has been hacked. And luckily, there is no thing in the world the Americans take more seriously than an attack on them and on their wallet. So they are immediately getting involved. How nice of them. Surely we can make this alliance last, right? The Americans act quickly and decisively, getting the code to the virus and setting up a conference between them and the Chinese who have already arrived. This includes Chen and his sister Lian.
The meltdown in China and the run-up in soy yesterday was facilitated by the same rat. How it got loaded in the first place, we don't know. But once inside, it decloaked and became what it really is. A remote access tool. A rat.
A remote access tool, or a rat, is simply a program that provides capability of operating a given target machine remotely. The legality of its use simply hinges upon legitimacy, and it is not illegal to use them in every single case. Keep that in mind. For example, tools such as TeamViewer or VNC Viewer for Windows, if I'm not mistaken, and Remina for Linux are completely legitimate tools to use, whether for work-related purposes or simply helping someone out. Someone who's not as digitally inclined as you are. If you're in tech support and your job is to take calls from clients or customers, at some point you might need access to their machine if they cannot do something that you are actively telling them to do. In such a case, we could use something like TeamViewer, VNC Viewer, or Remina, which is perfectly legitimate. Of course, you don't need a background in criminology to ascertain that this use, as demonstrated here, does not have all the same features and safeties as the legitimate software would, since it was written by someone on the outside. Therefore, it is probably illegal.
The rat's job was to open a backdoor in our system and call home. The Black Hat then used his backdoor to inject a second part. Its payload. That is what wrote up soy.
Daniels is qualified in computer forensics.
An intern could have written that report.
Oh, really? And who do we need if not Daniels?
Aside from the fact that Daniels sucks, we get requests for another player to join the game.
A man named Hathaway. He's a convicted hacker serving 15 years in USP Canaan in Waymart, Pennsylvania. Now, we want Hathaway on the team so he can help out the investigation.
Carol gives us an exposition about the hacker.
He hit 4 major banks, ran up $46 million in damages, and that's just what we know about? You want the DOJ to do anything other than laugh?
But Chen supplements the rest of the background story we need and quickly kills any and every suspicion she might have. For now, at least.
Daniel said 2 authors of the virus. I don't know who wrote the second half, but the first half, the rat, the remote access tool that Daniel's called lean and graceful, one of the original authors is me. I co-wrote it. My roommate, the genius lead author.
Nicholas Hathaway.
That's right.
Hathaway gets called up from his cell for the discussion of a lifetime, and the lawyer tries doing his usual
We're gonna furlough you right out of here. You sign that on the last page, and we'll get you processed.
However, Hathaway, as sharp and keen as he always was, immediately calls him out on it.
Both you and the assistant U.S. attorney take that document up your ass. You have any idea how much progress you're gonna make on a strike this complex without someone like me? 0. You want me to pass this upstairs?
Barrett, how badly do you need this guy?
Hathaway also makes a promise.
My assistance results in the identification and the apprehension of the guy you're after. I want you to commute my sentence. Those are the terms.
And the best friends reunite.
So good to see you, bro. Not half as much as it is for me to see you. Let's get out of here.
On the plane on their way home, Hathaway is performing his magic, and Carol still has that stick up her ass.
The hell is this?
What?
The agreement was an approval and a present for his computer access.
I approved it.
A DOJ approval.
I never understood the bloatedness of American bureaucracy, or any other one for that matter, If you fought for this guy to be released from prison to help you out, and he's the only one who can do it, then why are you having second thoughts? Whose life is that one piece of paper going to save? Do you even care about that thing?
Hola, chica, you came to me. How am I supposed to do my work? On an abacus or something?
Chica, am I Hispanic?
Luckily, she sees the logic of Hathaway. We go straight to work, flying over to the server room at an undefined location. Although extremely secured, the hacker still found a way to inject the virus here.
I have to run the morning backup.
Your network is sitting behind deep packet inspection, intrusion protection. It's extensively firewalled.
Exactly.
So someone had to physically enter this room, plug the virus in.
There's only one person who's authorized to access these terminals. Me. My password is my thumbprint.
We get a potential suspect.
Who works here who doesn't like you? Recently hired, fired.
Lozano.
And Hathaway gets straight back to criticizing the hacker's code.
Section of his code right here is a mess. There's 25 lines. He's left text. It looks incomplete.
With no indication of where the villains will strike next, they can't even act, let alone act fast. The worker brings Lozano's photos. However, we still need something more to go off of, and Carol asks for the surveillance tapes. We get some US info diggers.
Sought for Latino males under 30 with priors in, I don't know, anything like carding, identity theft, who were in West Texas prison gangs. Our cowboy has a tattoo on his shoulder. He's Los Zapotecas.
We get his actual name and address.
Alonzo Reyes did 2 years in Huntsville for carding. Paroled, moved back to LA. I'll have LA pick him up.
So now that we know where he lives, Hathaway and Chen's sister, Leanne, go to Alonso's home, while Chen and Carol go to Gary Baker, played by Spencer Garrett. He has the requisite data from private brokers and traders who benefited from the soybean future attack. A few minutes ago, Chen fails at convincing him to give them the data, but Carol does the American thing again, and luckily it works.
In the next 15 seconds, I call Laura and I say, Laura, how you doing? I'd like to launch an official investigation on one Gary Baker. So the headline, MTech official investigated for aiding and abetting cyber criminals, leaks to CNN in the next 90s. That'd be good too. Am I being tangible? Gary?
So Leanne and Hathaway get access to Alonso's compound, and the guy's dead, pretty much. With like a needle sticking out of his arm, possibly OD'd on something. Perhaps willingly, maybe even forcefully. Who's to say? Chen Lian checks the computer, while Nick hops on his private laptop and sees a message from a Russian IP address. And, conveniently enough, the contents of the email include the time and place for the next quote-unquote drop, whatever that might be. So Nick decides to set up the meet and the police sirens go loud.
She probably called 911.
Lian's into his specs.
He can route encrypted data and Stay anonymous with no IP address?
Okay, I do have a gripe with this part. This is just plain BS, in the purest of its pure forms. The IP is simply a set of rules and regulations for communication over the internet. You might even say a protocol. That is what the I and the P in IP stand for. Internet Protocol. The address part refers to just that, a place where you live, but online. This is basically tantamount to ordering something from Amazon but omitting your shipping address and expecting a smooth delivery despite those hiccups. You can't go online without an IP address because where do you live? Where are you coming from, dude? The CIA agent's phone has problems, so Nick takes care of that problem, as well as one of his own, while he's at it.
Let me see it.
Where you going? Someplace exotic?
Since this was way too of a sophisticated hack for one single person to pull off, and the fact that the current guy they were after is dead, Chen is searching for the other guys in question from the data, courtesy of Gary, who's probably home shitting his pants right about now, after that Carol monologue from a while earlier. Reyes was contacted about her drop, and since Nick replied, he will be the one showing up, along with Chen Lian. So they go to their dropout location, a random Chinese restaurant by the looks of it. Nick opens the door for Chen Lian, what a gentleman. They sit down, and Lian starts the interview.
Why you're in prison?
I was in a bar, I met some girl, and some guy got in my face about her. He started a fight, and when it's over, he's in the hospital and I'm arrested. I wound up sentenced to 18 months at MCI Norfolk. I traded academia for Gladiator Academy. Then I got out, I'm 22, and not a lot going on in Silicon Valley for an ex-con with no degree, so...
Cutting?
Yeah, that and wholesaling internationally. I had an 8-year run, and a few caught up with me, and I got 13 years.
Nick tells her his own life philosophy, and then Lian gives him some proper advice for the future.
You dedicate yourself to your program. You work out in your body and your mind.
Open your eyes.
What'd you say?
You talk like you're still in prison. But you're not in prison. Get your thinking to where you are, not where you've
What do you know?
They caught the guy, we think. Chen finds out the 3 suspicious accounts are all from the same place, Hong Kong. The Russian guy doesn't show up for a little while, and Nick, all flustered, gets up, getting this strange idea of walking into the employees only space, while an ominously placed camera is monitoring their every move, both him and Chen Lian. Nick finds a computer, taps the spacebar, and instantly the PC lights up. No login screen, no passwords, no nothing. Keep your machines logged off, guys. I really cannot stress this enough. Don't do this convenience stuff, that's how people get hacked. And my bad, it's actually a Korean restaurant, as the address written plainly on the computer screen tells us. So I googled the place and it actually exists. It's called Hamji Park, Korean barbecue place, with a score of 4.5 out of 5 on TripAdvisor. Anyways, he opens up the camera app and we see it fixed on Chen Lian, following her automatically as she stands up to get a napkin and sit down again. So Nick causes a mess in the computer room. Opening up the terminal, Nick starts firing commands to get more information on our villains. We get some additional info from the Whois query, indicating that the server is in Ukraine. So Nick writes to the guy saying he's onto him. Signed Ghostman. How scary. He didn't get the response he wanted, so he plugs the internet right out of the PC. At this point, has been compromised and he decides to leave. But he did spend all that time working out at the solitary confinement, and we have to have a nice fight scene before he does. So he is conveniently stopped by a gang of Asians getting inside the restaurant.
Why? Why are you here?
And Hathaway f***s them up. Okay, now we're packing. After this phone call, they will be following the money, as their operation in the US has been heavily compromised.
Reyes probably was killed. The email on his computer was bait. Whoever this is wanted to see if we were on Reyes' trail. We're burned.
Could you track it to our guy's location?
No, the video feed went to a proxy server in the Ukraine. Who knows where it bounces to off that?
We're flying to China in the morning.
You know, I would show more of this scene, but given the fact that my subscriber count is only in the double digits, and that the YouTube guidelines are basically longer than the Quran and Bible put together, I'm not sure what and how much of this I can show. Therefore, please subscribe, and I'll get more leeway by virtue of growing channel diplomacy. But for now, we're skipping this. Hathaway opens up to Chen Lian.
My dad was a steel worker, single father. He raised us on his own. Came to visit twice, and he got sick.
With the American route burned, they go back to China and the reactor which blew up in the beginning. The situation is quite grim. Ever since the beginning of the film, they were trying to find a reason for the attacks, but so far there are no plain ones to be found.
Since it happened, was there any demand for money?
No. Then it's not about extortion. Is he political? A terrorist attack, any declaration?
No claim, no statement.
So, having moved the operation to China, they get settled into their new house and introduce themselves.
Chen Lian, Inspector Alex Strong, Hong Kong Police, Hathaway, U.S. Marshal Mark Jessup.
Hello.
We also get the villains' names and some light background info. Finally, and it only took us a third of the runtime.
Johnny Lee, Yan Len, Samuel Wu. Lee just got out of prison 2 months ago. Yan and his mother are both junkies. Wu runs a chop shop. Hardly commodity speculators.
So the routing they've been using converges at one point, the Yaomate district of Hong Kong.
Where's this?
Yamade.
So they get into a stakeout van to get a better look at their surroundings. One guy in particular caught their eye. Someone, they say, who comes to the same place every day to meet someone. But that someone never shows up.
Every morning he comes here to meet someone. Elias Kassar. Fought with the Christian phalangists in the Civil War, then disappeared. Popped up in the 90s with the paramilitaries in Colombia. Renting a house month to month in Shekou.
So they go to the place, after the guy's done, and Nick uncovers an electronic device, a short-range Bluetooth transmitter that the van could never pick up. Nick then explains how it works.
Bluetooth transmitter, short range. We would never pick it up.
See, they don't come to meet him, they come to meet this. Kassar texts, Wu, Yang, and Lee walk by. The receivers in their pockets pick it up. They read it, delete it. Kassar never meets him, never sees him, no emails, no phones, no nothing. Slick.
Kassar is sitting around, seemingly waiting for something or someone, as he's being watched. He picks up on that though. The money starts moving out of their accounts, with wire transfers to Macau, the largest casino city in the world. Vegas ain't got shit on this place. The surveillance team has gone dark, so they have to do their own extraction. The objective? Blast Shekou and get Kassar and his cronies. They get into Shekou, but no sign of anyone. Luckily, one of the soldiers finds a hidden trapdoor, so they descend down that. The chase is now occurring both on the surface and underground. Now, if they caught Kassar here, then that would mean the end of the film. But we're not even halfway there, so that means that the villains have guns. And now's the perfect time to use them. Kassar pulls some lever down, probably arming the system, and they just keep going. The surface team is catching up to them while the underground team is sweeping the tunnel from the other side. a classic two-pronged attack. We lose Strong, and Nick starts firing shots as well.
Stay down!
With a couple of fallen bad guys later, the others have successfully managed to push both prongs of the attack, getting into their little boat and speeding away like clockwork. They meet up with some boat in the middle of nowhere at nighttime and hand over the cash, while getting something else back in return. With the Kassar situation not yielding any results, they go back to the nuclear power plant. They will be going inside the reactor to retrieve the data from Kassar. Remember the reactor where the guy left his own code and information from back in the beginning? Yeah, neither do I, but they're going inside there now to recover the lost memory. The investigation is underway. We find out the fragments of the malware are in there, as well as the guy's IP address, but both are, quote-unquote, full of holes.
We were right. In the memory dump are the fragments of the malware. But it's corrupted. Maybe his IP address, but it's too full of holes.
You know, when the Phoebe team busted me in '07 and hit my door, I was flushing files. But when I came to trial, they retrieved all this data that should have been irretrievable.
And we learn of a new piece of software that should definitely make you start shitting bricks, if you're into this sort of thing. The Black Widow from the NSA. It
examines fragments and reconstructs originals within a couple of hours of supercomputing.
So Carol calls her handler from the NSA, Richard Donahue, asking for authorization to use the service. But Rich is more concerned about the Chinese using the tech, and even more, Hathaway. So he immediately shoots them down. So now it's time to hack the NSA. Only the American agents have left the building so they could have at least some plausible deniability when the case inevitably gets to court. You know, assuming Nick doesn't make a run for it. While Carol and Jessup were outside, some inconspicuous looking guy came over and placed a tracking device at the exhaust pipe of their vehicle. They are now a ticking time bomb. Hathaway hacks the NSA in the most poetic hacker way ever, by spoofing his email address and sending an email to Donahue, posing as Ben Hitchens, his direct superior. He tells him to change his password and encloses a PDF file on how to create a strong and secure one. Only, it wasn't just a document, but an embedded keylogger to boot. So Ben gets the email, reads it, and, like any and every government drone out there, fully complies with the instructions provided and doesn't ask any questions. He changes the password, thus giving it to Nick. And just like that, we're in. Nick starts up the Black Widow, and now all we have to do is sit back and wait. Nick rendezvous with the agents in a restaurant to break the news. They're officially in.
You can call me Chica anytime you want.
Nick starts breaking it down for the agents. Turns out their guys' servers are physically located in Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia. Chen Lian's working on Intra Armor, the villain's hosting server. We get into their accounting details, and we see that our guys in questions were taking high-resolution satellite scans of the coast of Malaysia.
You getting anywhere?
No, not into the servers, but I got into Intra Armor's accounting. Look at this.
Charges to our boy's account. Okay, so?
Look at this. $14, $17, now $16,400. 5 times. Paid to satellite shot. Satellite shot ran satellite time.
Since the Americans are so far away removed and they have no jurisdiction in Malaysia, Chen takes up this with his bosses for another face-to-face. While they will be going there and granting them access, turns out they're also concerned about the fact that they're working with an unhinged hacker with a boulder of a chip on his shoulder. So they immediately instruct Chen to hand Hathaway over to the Americans. Carol gets a call from her handlers with express orders to subdue Hathaway. But he was tipped off by Chen Lian in time, and he's gone.
Do you know what your guy did?
Our guy blew a reactor at Chaiwan. Don't you watch CNN?
That's not the point.
That's exactly the point.
Look, I'm under orders. Now so are you. Bring him in, Carol. Bring him in.
The two of them meet up with Chen, and he tells Hathaway he's busted because of the Black Widow. And, a kind man at heart, he refuses to hand his friend in, but rather complete the assignment with him instead. Chen Lian wants to go with them too, but Hathaway refuses to take her in on account of all the lingering danger around them. You know, ever since the moment he was set free, basically. They are to meet up at Quarry Bay at a later point in time. They pick up Chen Lian for the hard disk, and her brother asks her to go home where she'll stay safe. She acts like any network engineer would when they don't get what they want, by throwing a hissy fit and removing herself from the situation. Nick storms after her. He manages to calm her down, and they turn towards Chen. And just like that, the car instantly explodes. We see one of Kassar's men blowing up Chen with an RPG. The rest of the guys also open fire. They're just doubling their efforts and making sure nothing moves, as instructed. Carol and Jessup show up in the nick of time, and a gunfight ensues. They didn't follow the cardinal rule number 2 of combat, that's don't bring a semi to a full auto fight, and they simply get turned into Swiss cheese. But not before taking a few of the bad guys down with them. And just like that, 60% of the critical crew got eliminated in a heartbeat. With everybody gone, it's just Nick and Chen Lian left. They're running for their lives at this point, and they get to the subway to board a train. Chen Lian breaks down for a moment, but for the time being, they are at least safe. They have their work cut out for them, and the next part of the assignment is going to Malaysia. However, they still have to go and get Nick's ankle bracelet removed. They toss it on some random cargo ship. God knows where it is right now. They find an underground passageway with a Stasik pump, the same one, or the same model at least, that has been used in the nuclear reactors, or their centrifuges, at Chai-1, the nuclear facility that blew up in the beginning. Spurred by this new discovery, they get back where they can talk. I'll let Nick wrap this one up for us.
Water with Stasik pumps. You know why Chai-1 reactor? Chai-1 was a rehearsal. He's gonna shut down these pumps and flood the tin mine, and the valleys, and the villages, village people, village dogs. Create a shortage in tin prices will rise and shoot up. That's what you're doing. Isn't it, you son of a bitch?
So after we've learned about the bad guy's intent, we go straight to work in Jakarta. They bought some tools. Keep an eye out for them, I think they'll become important later. We'll need a distraction for a little while right now, so Nick rams his jeep into a truck precariously parked at the edge of the roof, sending it barreling down. While everyone's taking care of that, nobody sees Nick entering the Intra-Armor's server site. He finds what he was looking for and hooks it up to a computer. After the command run, he sees the same username he spoke to back when he went on that date with Chen Lian at the Korean restaurant in America. And now, in order to get closer to our guys, we're going to copy all of their information. Now this is another scene I take an issue with. He's using the command CP, which simply copies, like, files. You can do it recursively as well and copy multiple of them. You can copy directories. However, it's quite a simple command. If you're into copying an entire file system, and a server would constitute as one, the better command to use would be the dd command, as I was taught by Occupy the Web in his book Linux Basics for Hackers. The dd command copies everything, like absolutely everything. But this was good enough given the circumstances, and they have everything they need. So the two of them can get straight to scripting again. Since they have everything they could get to digitally, now it's time for some good old-fashioned social engineering.
sorry, can you speak English?
A little.
I'm here to have a meeting with Mr. John Harry in 5 minutes.
Go to the reception on the third floor.
Yeah, I know, but can you help me? My presentation got stained. Any chance can you print me a new copy, please?
Not supposed to, but...
Given the fact that the bad guys have consistently been one step ahead, he decides to foil their plans a little. So he transfers the money to his own bank account. Old habits die hard. So he leaves a message and the phone number to reach him at. The phone rings at a slightly inopportune moment, and Hathaway does what Hathaway does.
I'm not gonna talk to a fucking bag man. Hey, here's the terms. Phones only, no face-to-face.
That's not possible.
I have 74 million of his money. You make it possible.
He gets a call from the boss, who actually knows him all too well.
Yeah.
Your note said that you know me, but I don't know you. But that's not really true, is it, Hathaway?
Yeah? I know you.
Oh, you do?
I know you. You're about money.
You found me? What do you want?
I want 20% of the Malaysian tin ore hit.
For releasing my money.
Oh, for renting you my code.
Like any selfish and personally motivated Blackhat hacker, Nick couldn't give less of a shit about their hacking efforts. He just wants his 20% because of this. And now, like two old Redditors at heart, they engage into philosophical discussions.
It's my action that gave that code you wrote meaning.
What's it mean without a bankroll?
You want to be my partner?
20%, you call it whatever you want.
They get the tools and the medical supplies ready. Hathaway fashions himself some impromptu armor and weapon holsters. And they're getting ready to meet up with our bad guys. However, after an unsuccessful hit attempt on Nick, they set the meeting to a different venue, Papua Square. Hathaway gets close to Kassar, but is spotted at the last moment. After a little reprieve, Hathaway turns around, rams Kassar, and starts stabbing him with a screwdriver. Told you some of those tools would come in handy. Now with a gun on his person, he can finally start disposing of the villains.
20% is too much, Hathaway.
You talking points?
Well, people die on this planet every day. What are you going to do? Grieve? Because I knew him. He's not here anymore.
So another gunfight starts, and Hathaway is hit quite a few times. Luckily, all the newspapers and the yellow and white pages he taped onto himself are paying off dividends right about now. Given that he is the main character, there was no contest whatsoever. He simply starts mowing down the enemy one by one. Finally, the boss reveals himself and gets up close and personal, but he stabs Hathaway in the neck pillow. Yeah, he's also got one of those too. That was all the notice Hathaway needed, so he immediately turns around and starts sadistically stabbing the shit out of the boss. With no one else alive, their operation is a complete bust, and Hathaway gets out clean, with a cool 74 mil. Chen Lian is there to get him to safety. She treats his wounds, and he's as good as new. With the bad guys disposed of, his ankle bracelet removed, and the Americans far, far away from him, he realizes he's completely safe. He puts his card into an ATM at the end. With a proper PIN, he sees the account balance and takes some for the road. He and Chen Lian disappear into the mass of humanity, hop on a plane, and take their flight never to be seen again, thus starting a life on the run. While the premise of the film is extremely interesting, most of the general audience found it really boring. Thus the bad grade and the eventual flop outcome. And honestly, I can see why. When you have a plethora of superhero films at your disposal, as well as a litany of run, chase and shoot 'em ups, like the John Wick series, making hacking seem like a high-stakes game is quite a difficult task to pull off. While we did see combat and social engineering here, those were only small parts of an otherwise larger whole. When the attack succeeds, it's done. So for the most part, the work was not glamorous at all. Just a lot of travel, sitting on a chair, reading, writing, analyzing, and dissecting code, for a relatively low-stakes purpose. There's no declaration of war looming, and the world isn't going to end. It's just about a couple of highly motivated hustlers trying to bankroll their nerdy passion projects. And I just can't fault the film, because it's not the film's fault. Some things are easier to televise than some pose challenges. The one thing that they forgot to include in the film was the fact that many cybersecurity engineers, pen testers, and hackers suffer from substance abuse. Then again, there's only so much stuff you can fit in a couple of hours. If this were a show such as Mr. Robot, we would have seen more facets of the environment hackers live in. Their professional life, the friends they hang out with, or lack thereof, their family members, and the people and situations they just happen to stumble upon by following their own trajectory in life and sticking to their own principles. Overall, a very solid film which realistically depicts hackers, their tools, methods, and know-how.